The disruption that's coming to auto is a very big one because it's not just wrapped up in the car companies themselves, it's wrapped up in fossil fuels. So the electric car, and let's not even talk about autonomous cars because we're not really focused on that, but the electric car in itself is a game changer. And it's the value of the game that it's changing is in the trillions, and I do not use that term lightly. It is in the trillions because if you go from a situation where you you consume energy by digging it out of the ground and burning it, that's one approach. That's the fossil fuel engines, and internal combustion engines have worked that way for 100 years. That is, and they have innovated through that period. But of course, energy isn't, and this is one of the core thematics, energy isn't necessarily something to be dug out of the ground and burned. Energy is all around us. It's a matter of using technology to harness, whether it's wind or solar. It doesn't matter. There are ways that you can harness energy which do not obviously entail burning it. So when you think about those two things, the first thing that you realise is and one of our thematics is energy as a technology, not as a fuel. That is a core thematic of ours. And immediately that you think about energy not as a fuel, it has implications for the global oil industry and of course the coal industry as well. So we know that Aramco, because of the recent bond issue, is a $2 trillion company. We know that Exxon, Shell, BP, etc. are another $1 trillion, so that's $3 trillion. And we know that if you add up the capitalisation of the companies, 50 billion, 70 billion each for Daimler, BMW, etc., you'll get up to another $1 trillion. So that's going to be $4 trillion in the oil and car industries right there. Now, what happens, so the oil industry becomes a whole lot less important. The car industry, which is based on this idea of the internal combustion engine burning petrol, is significantly reworked into something that has 80 or 90% fewer moving parts relative to the internal combustion engine. That has massive disruption implications across the board for car widget makers, catalytic cracker makers, turbo makers, all of the things that go into an internal combustion engine are not in an electric engine, and it's not like they're replaced, they're done away with. If you open up the front of an electric car, you won't find an engine. If you open up the back of an electric car, you won't find an engine. It's literally a skateboard with a battery and a series of brushes to wind the motor, to motivate the motor, as it were, with a cockpit on top. This is a massively disruptive massively disruptive change, and for global fund managers who are buying transport indices and oil indices in the form of Exxon or BP or Daimler or all of that stuff. Investors who are in those things are, in a sense, buying yesterday's innovation. The point about disruption relative to innovation is disruption. There's been 100 years of innovation in car companies. Better, faster cars, power everything, more bells and whistles, etc., etc. The electric car isn't an innovation. It is disruptive because it renders everything that went before it obsolete. The iPhone, the smartphone, isn't just an innovation. It's disruptive because it renders the landline obsolete, it renders the camera that you might have carried around with you obsolete, it renders the CD player that you used to run with obsolete, it renders a whole lot of things instantaneously obsolete. And all the value chain in the production of those things also is rendered valueless in that process. This is why disruption is so dangerous, and this is why we're extracting these terrific returns out of it.